Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Horizon, your slow English podcast for relaxing listening practice, real conversations, and meaningful life stories. I'm really happy you're here today. Whether you're drinking your morning coffee, walking in the park, driving to work, or simply relaxing at home, thank you for spending this time with me. Before we begin, take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders relax. And don't worry if you don't understand every single word. Just enjoy the conversation. Little by little, your listening skills will grow naturally. Today, we're going to talk about something very simple, but surprisingly powerful. Small daily habits. At first, they may not seem important. In fact, they can even feel too small to make any real difference. Many people believe that changing their lives requires something big. A new job, a lot of money, a perfect plan, or a dramatic decision. They wait for the perfect moment, believing that one day everything will suddenly change. But real life rarely works that way. Think about your own day for a moment. What is the very first thing you do after you wake up? Maybe you make a cup of coffee. Maybe you check your phone. Maybe you open the window and look outside. Or maybe you spend a few quiet minutes listening to English. These actions feel ordinary, almost too ordinary to notice. Yet they slowly shape the person you become. Imagine holding a tiny seed in your hand. It's so small that it almost seems meaningless. You could easily lose it without noticing. But if you place that little seed in the soil, give it sunlight, give it water, and patiently care for it every day, something amazing begins to happen. Nothing changes overnight. The first few days look exactly the same. Then, one morning, a tiny green leaf appears. Weeks pass, then months, and one day, that little seed has become a strong tree. Our habits grow in exactly the same way. Quietly, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day the results become impossible to ignore. The problem is that most people stop too early. They exercise for 3 days, then quit because they don't see any changes. They study English for 1 week, then feel disappointed because they still cannot speak fluently. They read a few pages of a book, then decide it isn't helping. They aren't failing because they lack ability. They're failing because they're expecting immediate results from something that needs time to grow. Small habits are not magic. They're investments. Imagine putting just 1 coin into a glass jar every single day. 1 coin doesn't look impressive. Neither do 5, or even 20. But if you continue adding 1 coin every day, without missing, the jar slowly fills up. One day, you look inside, and you're surprised by how much you've saved. Progress often happens like that. Quietly, consistently, and almost invisibly. Learning English is no different. Nobody wakes up one morning speaking perfect English. Confidence grows 1 conversation at a time. Vocabulary grows 1 expression at a time. Listening improves 1 podcast at a time. That's exactly why this podcast exists. Not to teach hundreds of difficult words in 1 lesson. Not to make learning feel stressful, but to help you build 1 simple habit. Listening to English a little every day, until understanding becomes natural. In today's episode, we'll explore why small daily habits are much more powerful than most people realize. We'll hear the inspiring story of someone whose life changed because of one tiny decision. We'll learn useful English expressions in real conversations. And, by the end of this episode, I hope you'll discover that the smallest step you take today could become the biggest change in your future. So, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin our Slow English podcast together. Have you ever made a big promise to yourself? Maybe you said, starting tomorrow, I'm going to change my life. You felt excited, motivated, and full of energy. You imagined waking up early every morning, exercising for an hour, reading books every night, eating healthy food, and speaking English every single day. At that moment, everything seemed possible, but then something happened. The next morning, the alarm clock rang, and your bed felt warmer than your goals. After a long day at work or school, you felt tired. You told yourself, I'll start tomorrow. Then tomorrow became next week, next month, and sometimes never. Does that sound familiar? Don't worry. You're not alone. Almost everyone has experienced this feeling at least once. The problem isn't that people are lazy, and it isn't because they don't want a better life. The real problem is that we often focus too much on big goals and not enough on small daily actions. Imagine standing at the bottom of a very high mountain. Looking at the top can feel overwhelming. You might think, it's too far. I can't do it. But what if you stopped looking at the mountain and only focused on the next step? One small step doesn't feel difficult, then another step, and another. Without realizing it, you've already climbed much higher than you expected. Life often works in exactly the same way. Let's think about learning English. Many learners say, I want to speak English fluently. It's a wonderful goal, but it's also a very big one. Every day they think about how far they still have to go. And that feeling can become discouraging. Instead of enjoying the learning process, they keep comparing themselves with people who have studied for many years. Now imagine a different person. This learner has a much smaller goal. Every day, they spend just 15 minutes listening to English. They don't worry about becoming fluent next month. They simply focus on today's 15 minutes. Some days are easier than others, but they keep showing up, week after week, month after month. Their ears slowly become familiar with the sounds of English. They begin to recognize common expressions, understand conversations more naturally, and speak with greater confidence. The progress is slow, but it's real. And more importantly, it lasts. This is one reason why small habits are so powerful. They don't ask us to become a different person overnight. They simply invite us to become a little better than we were yesterday. Just one small improvement, repeated every day, can create an extraordinary result over time. Think about brushing your teeth. Most people never ask themselves, should I brush my teeth today? They simply do it. It's part of their routine. It doesn't require a lot of motivation. Because it has become a habit, imagine if practicing English could feel just as natural. Instead of waiting until you feel inspired, you simply sit down, press play, and enjoy listening for a few minutes. No pressure. No stress. Just another healthy habit in your day. Many successful people share one thing in common. They don't depend on motivation every morning. Motivation comes and goes. But habits stay. Some mornings you'll feel excited. Other mornings you'll feel tired, busy, or distracted. If your progress depends only on motivation, you'll often stop. But if your progress depends on a simple daily habit, you'll continue moving forward. Even on difficult days. Here's another interesting idea. Imagine two friends. The first friend tries to improve by 1% every day. The second friend decides to wait until the perfect time to make a huge change. After 1 year, who do you think will be closer to success? Most of us already know the answer. Small improvements may seem invisible today, but they quietly build a stronger future. That is why today's conversation isn't really about habits. It's about becoming the kind of person you want to be. One small choice at a time. Every healthy meal. Every short walk. Every page you read. Every English podcast you listen to is a vote for the person you're becoming. So, instead of asking yourself, how can I completely change my life? Maybe try asking a different question. What is one small thing I can do today? Sometimes, that single question is the beginning of something truly remarkable. Sometimes, we think our lives change because of one big moment. Graduating from university, getting a new job, moving to another city, or meeting someone special. Those moments are important. But if we look more closely, we'll often discover that they began with one very small decision made, long before anyone noticed. Imagine planting 2 gardens on the same day. In the first garden, someone waters the plants every morning. Even if it's only for a few minutes, they pull out the small weeds before they grow larger. And they patiently wait. In the second garden, someone waters the plants only when they remember, sometimes once a week, sometimes not at all. At first, both gardens look almost identical, but after a few months, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. One garden is full of healthy flowers, while the other struggles to survive. Our daily habits work exactly the same way. Every small action is like watering the garden of your future. You may not see the results today, but every positive choice is helping something grow inside you. Let's think about a normal weekday. You wake up, make breakfast, get ready for work or school, answer messages, finish your responsibilities, and finally return home. By the end of the day, you might feel tired. You might think, I'm too busy to improve myself today. But improving yourself doesn't always require an extra hour. Sometimes, it only takes 5 or 10 quiet minutes. Imagine replacing 10 minutes of endless scrolling on your phone with 10 minutes of listening to English. At first, it doesn't seem like a big change, but after 1 month, you've listened for about 5 hours. After 6 months, you've spent around 30 hours hearing natural English. After 1 year, you've built a habit that many people never managed to create. The difference wasn't one extraordinary day. It was hundreds of ordinary days connected together. One beautiful thing about small habits is that they remove fear. Big goals often feel heavy. They make us think about everything we haven't achieved yet. Small habits feel friendly. They quietly say, just do a little today. Suddenly, success doesn't seem so far away. Let's imagine two English learners, Alex and David. Alex studies only when he feels motivated. Some weeks, he studies for 3 hours. Other weeks, he doesn't study at all. David chooses a different approach. Every evening, after dinner, he listens to one short English podcast for 15 minutes. Some days he's excited. Some days he's tired. But he still keeps his promise to himself. 1 year later, people are surprised by David's progress. They think he has a special talent. But David knows the truth. His secret wasn't talent. It was consistency. Consistency is a quiet kind of strength. It doesn't attract attention in the beginning because it looks ordinary. But over time, consistency becomes one of the most powerful forces in personal growth. It allows ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results simply because they refuse to stop. This idea is also true in relationships. Imagine calling your parents for just a few minutes every week, sending a kind message to a friend, thanking someone who helped you, or smiling at a stranger. None of these actions seem dramatic, but together, they create trust, kindness, and stronger connections with the people around you. The same principle applies to confidence. Many people believe confidence appears first, and then they begin taking action. In reality, confidence often grows after repeated action. Every time you practice speaking English, even if you make mistakes, you're teaching your brain that it's safe to keep trying. Little by little, fear becomes smaller, and confidence becomes stronger. Perhaps the most encouraging part of all is this: you don't have to change your entire life today. You don't need the perfect schedule, the perfect notebook, or the perfect motivation. All you need is one small decision, repeated tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that again. So, before we continue, I'd like you to pause for a moment and think about your own life. If you could improve just one small habit this week, what would it be? Maybe you'll drink more water, read one page of a book, take a short walk, or spend 15 peaceful minutes listening to English. Whatever you choose, remember that every great journey begins with a single step, and every meaningful change begins with one small habit that you decide to keep. Now, I'd like to tell you a simple story. It's not a story about becoming rich overnight or becoming famous. It's about an ordinary woman who discovered that small habits can quietly change an ordinary life. Her name is Emma. Emma worked in a small office in Toronto. Every morning, she woke up at 7 o'clock, rushed to get ready, grabbed a quick breakfast, and hurried to catch the bus. Her days always felt the same: work, home, dinner, television, sleep, then everything repeated again the next morning. One evening, while scrolling through her phone, Emma suddenly realized something she had been saying. I want to improve my English. For almost 2 years, yet nothing had really changed. She had downloaded language apps, bought grammar books, even watched a few online lessons. Every time, she started with excitement, and every time, she stopped after a week or two. She quietly asked herself, "Why do I always give up?" The answer surprised her. She wasn't failing because English was too difficult. She was failing because she expected herself to do too much, too quickly. That night, instead of making another big promise, she made a very small one. I'll listen to English for just 5 minutes every morning. Only 5 minutes. No pressure. No complicated study plan. No long vocabulary lists. Just 5 quiet minutes while drinking her morning coffee. The first morning felt easy. She played a slow English podcast, listened carefully, smiled when she understood a few familiar words, and then left for work. The second morning, she almost forgot. She looked at the clock, realized she only had a few minutes, and thought about skipping it. Then she remembered her promise. 5 minutes wasn't difficult. So she pressed play, day after day. The habit slowly became part of her morning routine. After a few weeks, something interesting happened. She no longer needed to remind herself. As soon as the coffee was ready, her hand automatically reached for her phone, not to check social media, but to open her favorite English podcast. The habit had become natural. After 3 months, Emma noticed another change. She wasn't translating every sentence in her head anymore. She began recognizing common expressions without thinking. Simple conversations sounded clearer. She could follow stories more easily. And most importantly, she wasn't afraid of English anymore. One afternoon, a new colleague joined the office. He had recently moved from Australia. During lunch, he smiled and asked Emma a simple question in English. Normally, Emma would have answered with just 1 or 2 words. But this time, something felt different. She took a deep breath, smiled back, and answered in complete sentences. The conversation wasn't perfect. She made a few grammar mistakes, searched for the right words once or twice, but she kept talking. The conversation lasted only a few minutes. Yet when it ended, Emma felt incredibly proud of herself. She realized that confidence hadn't appeared suddenly that afternoon. It had been quietly growing every morning, one 5-minute habit at a time. That evening, she walked home with a big smile. She thought back to the person she had been just a few months earlier. The person who believed she didn't have enough time, enough talent, or enough motivation. Now she understood something important. She didn't need more motivation. She needed a habit. From that day forward, Emma slowly added one more small habit. She started writing 1 English sentence every evening before bed. Some days it was about the weather, sometimes about her work, sometimes about something funny that happened during the day. 1 sentence became 2, then 3. And after several months, she was writing short journal entries in English without feeling nervous. Looking back, Emma laughed at herself. She had spent years searching for the perfect method, when the real answer had been surprisingly simple. Start small, stay consistent, trust the process. Her life didn't change in one dramatic moment. It changed through hundreds of tiny decisions that nobody else noticed. And perhaps that's how many meaningful changes happen in our own lives too. People often admire the beautiful tree, but they forget about the tiny seed, the daily sunshine, the gentle rain, and the patient care that helped it grow. Success is rarely one giant leap. More often, it's thousands of small steps taken quietly, one day after another, until one morning you look back and realize you've become someone stronger than you ever imagined. Now that we've heard Emma's story, let's think about our own lives for a moment. Maybe you're wondering, that was a nice story, but how can I build a habit like that? The good news is, you don't need a perfect plan. You don't need expensive courses. And you certainly don't need to study for hours every day. What you need is a simple routine, one that feels easy enough to repeat. Even on your busiest days, let's imagine two different English learners. The first learner is called Sarah. She decides that she's going to study English for 3 hours every Saturday. At first, it sounds like a great idea, but when Saturday arrives, life gets busy. Sometimes she has family plans. Sometimes she's tired after a long week. Sometimes she simply isn't in the mood. One missed Saturday becomes 2, then 3. And before long, she has stopped studying altogether. The second learner is called Michael. He makes a different decision every evening. After brushing his teeth, he sits down for just 15 minutes. He doesn't worry about learning everything. He simply listens to one slow English conversation. Some days, he understands almost every sentence. Other days, he only catches a few words. But he keeps listening because his goal isn't perfection. It's consistency. After 6 months, who do you think has made more progress? Most people would probably say Michael. And they're right. Not because he studied harder, but because he studied more consistently. His habit became part of his daily routine, just like brushing his teeth or making breakfast. He no longer had to ask himself whether he should study today, because the decision had already been made. This is something many successful language learners discover. They don't rely on motivation every day. Instead, they create an environment that makes good habits easier. For example, imagine placing your headphones next to your coffee cup every evening. The next morning, when you make your coffee, you'll immediately see your headphones. That small reminder makes it much easier to press play and begin listening. Sometimes, success isn't about having more discipline. It's about making good choices easier. Another helpful idea is to connect a new habit with an old one. Psychologists sometimes call this habit stacking, but the idea is actually very simple. You take something you already do every day and add one small new action immediately afterward. For example, after I make my morning coffee, I'll listen to one English podcast. After I finish lunch, I'll learn one new expression. After I brush my teeth, I'll read one page in English, because the first habit already exists. The second habit becomes easier to remember. Little by little, the two habits begin to feel like one natural routine. There's another important lesson I'd like to share. Never compare your beginning with someone else's middle. Sometimes we watch people speaking beautiful English on YouTube, and we think, I'll never sound like that. But we don't see the thousands of hours they spent practicing, making mistakes, and learning step by step. Every confident speaker was once a beginner, just like you, and just like me. Instead of asking, why am I not fluent yet? Try asking, Did I practice today? That question is much kinder and much more useful. Progress doesn't come from worrying about the future. It comes from taking care of today. Here's a simple challenge you can try this week. Choose one small English habit and promise yourself that you'll do it every day for the next 7 days. Keep it so small that it feels almost impossible to fail. Listen to one short podcast. Learn one useful phrase. Or read one paragraph in English. That's enough. The goal isn't to impress anyone. The goal is to build trust in yourself. Every time you keep a small promise, your confidence grows a little stronger. You begin to believe, I can do this. And that belief becomes one of the most powerful habits of all. So remember, you don't have to study perfectly. You don't have to know every word. You don't have to be the best English learner in the world. You only need to be a little more consistent than you were yesterday. One conversation, one expression, one podcast, one day at a time, and before you realize it, those small moments will become part of a much bigger story. The story of how you slowly, patiently, and confidently built a new skill that will stay with you for the rest of your life. Have you ever noticed that good habits are contagious? Sometimes, without saying a single word, your actions quietly encourage the people around you. You may think that your small daily routine only affects your own life. But that's rarely true. Every positive habit creates a ripple, just like dropping a small stone into a calm lake. The stone is tiny, but the circles on the water continue to grow, reaching places you never expected. Let's imagine another story. A young father named Daniel wanted his 8-year-old daughter to enjoy reading every evening. He reminded her to read a book before bed. Sometimes she listened. Sometimes she didn't. One day, Daniel realized something important. He was asking his daughter to do something that she never saw him doing. So instead of giving more advice, he changed one small habit every night. After dinner, he sat quietly on the sofa with a book. He didn't ask anyone to join him. He simply read for 15 minutes. His daughter watched him from across the room. The first few evenings, she didn't say anything. A week later, she picked up one of her own books and sat beside him. Neither of them spoke very much, but they shared those peaceful moments together. Months passed, and reading became part of their family life. Daniel never forced the habit. He simply lived it. His daughter learned not because she was told, but because she saw a good example every single day. Learning English can work in the same way. Perhaps someone in your family notices that you listen to English every morning. At first, they may not pay much attention, but after a while, they become curious. They ask, "What are you listening to?" You smile and say, "It's a slow English podcast. It helps me relax while improving my listening." Maybe one day, they decide to listen with you. Small habits often begin with one person, but they don't always end there. This is one reason habits are more powerful than motivation. Motivation is personal. It comes and goes. Habits, however, become part of our identity. After repeating something for many months, you no longer think, "I'm trying to learn English." Instead, you begin to think, "I'm someone who enjoys listening to English every day." That small change in identity is incredibly important. Imagine two different ways of speaking. The first person says, I'm trying to become healthier. The second person says, I'm a healthy person. The words sound similar, but they create very different feelings. The second sentence describes who the person believes they are. Their daily actions naturally follow that belief. The same idea applies to language learning. Instead of saying, I'm trying to study English, perhaps one day you'll naturally say, I'm an English learner, and listening to English is part of my daily life. Notice how peaceful that sounds. There's no pressure. No impossible expectation. Just a simple part of who you are. Of course, there will still be difficult days. Everyone has them. Some mornings, you'll feel tired. Some evenings, you'll be busy. You might miss a day, or even a few days. That's perfectly normal. The important thing isn't to be perfect. The important thing is to begin again. Many people fail because they believe one mistake means they've ruined everything. They miss one workout, so they stop exercising. They skip one English lesson, so they give up completely. But real progress doesn't disappear because of one missed day. What matters is returning to your habit as soon as you can. Think of your habit like walking along a path through a beautiful forest. If you step off the path for a moment, you haven't lost the journey. You simply take one step back onto the path and continue walking. That's all. No guilt, no shame, just one small step forward. As we come closer to the end of today's episode, I'd like you to remember one simple truth. You don't need extraordinary talent to build a better future. You don't need perfect motivation. You don't need endless free time. Sometimes, all you need is one small habit. Repeated with patience, repeated with kindness, and repeated often enough that it quietly becomes part of the person you are becoming. As we reach the end of today's episode, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. One simple idea that you can carry with you long after this conversation is over. Life rarely changes all at once. Most of the time, change happens so quietly that we don't even notice it. Day after day, we repeat the same small actions, and little by little, those actions begin to shape our future. Imagine standing on a beach at sunrise. The waves gently touch the shore, then slowly move back into the sea. One wave doesn't seem powerful. It looks soft, calm, almost insignificant. But after years, those same gentle waves can smooth rough stones, shape the coastline, and completely change the landscape. Our daily habits are very much like those waves. They don't need to be dramatic. They don't need to be perfect. They simply need to continue. Maybe today, you'll choose to spend just 15 minutes listening to English. Tomorrow, you'll do the same. Next week, you'll understand a few more words than you do today. Next month, you'll notice familiar expressions appearing again and again. One day, you'll suddenly realize something surprising. You're no longer translating every sentence. You're no longer afraid to listen. You're no longer worried about making every sentence perfect. Instead, you're simply enjoying English. That moment won't arrive because of one extraordinary lesson. It will arrive because you stayed patient. Even when progress felt invisible, there's a beautiful saying that reminds us. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. The same idea applies to every good habit. Perhaps you wish you had started learning English years ago. Maybe you regret the opportunities you missed. or the times you gave up, those feelings are completely understandable. But they cannot change the past. What can change is today. Today is always a new beginning. No matter how many times you've stopped before, today gives you another chance to start again. And this time, you don't need to promise yourself something impossible. You don't need to study for hours. You don't need to become fluent in a few months. You only need one small promise. I'll keep going. One day at a time. Those simple words may not sound exciting, but they are incredibly powerful. They remove pressure. They reduce fear. And they allow progress to happen naturally. Before we finish, I'd like to ask you one question. If your future self could meet you 1 year from today, what would they thank you for? Would they thank you for waiting until everything was perfect? Probably not. Would they thank you for making one small decision and repeating it every day? I think the answer is yes. Your future is built by the choices you make today. Not the biggest choices, the smallest ones. So, after this episode ends, don't try to change your whole life. Just choose one habit, make it easy, make it realistic, and most importantly, make it something you can enjoy. Maybe you'll listen to one slow English podcast every morning. Maybe you'll learn one useful expression each day. Maybe you'll spend 10 quiet minutes reading in English before bed. Whatever you choose, let it become part of your daily life. Remember, you are not competing with anyone else. You are simply becoming a little better than you were yesterday. And that's more than enough. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I truly hope this episode has encouraged you, not only to improve your English, but also to believe in the incredible power of small daily habits. If you enjoyed today's Slow English podcast, and you'd like more relaxing English conversations and meaningful life stories, I'd love for you to join me again in the next episode. Until then, take care of yourself. Keep learning. Keep smiling. And remember, small habits, practiced every day, can create a life you never thought possible. Have a wonderful day. And I'll see you again very soon. Here on English Horizon,